Okay, so let me describe the Seismic Safety Commission to you. It has 20 commissioners, 15 are appointed by the governor. Local government, there are 2 city and 2 county representatives on the Seismic Safety Commission, and that helps us produce products that are usable, hopefully, for local governments. And that's what we're asking your assistance for today. A little background here is we're trying to communicate to businesses in a format that they understand. And personally, for me, that format has been, if we can use results from existing disasters where businesses have suffered from existing or previous disasters, and combine that with using scenarios that predict the future or what could happen to that business, and then go one step further and leave these businesses with something that they can use to help them reduce their losses and speed the recovery. Unfortunately, disaster losses worldwide are increasing. They're not stabilizing or not decreasing. And 2017 was a pretty good example for losses in the United States with these hurricanes and with fire. The loss of life is unacceptable. I'm sure you all saw the recent numbers coming out of Puerto Rico where they upped their deaths from around 60 to 3,000, which is kind of very substantial. And injuries aren't usually carried as much by the news media, and injuries can really impact a business. Usually the injury losses are 10 to 20 times the life loss. So businesses can expect injuries, hopefully no deaths, but you're going to get some injuries during these events. Damage to the built environment, that's still unacceptable. Most businesses don't understand what the building codes in California provide them. There are life loss codes. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be in business the day after an earthquake, for example. Economic impacts, how severe is it going to be? The Haywired scenario that was done in the Bay Area last April is going to be releasing the socioeconomic impacts of a 7.0 earthquake on the Haywired Fault with an epicenter in Oakland. That'll be next April. Data from Puerto Rico shows that 5,000 to 10,000 failures out of 45,000 businesses are expected from that event, which is pretty substantial. So what's going on? There's migration to cities and urban areas in the United States, and that's not just happening here, it's happening worldwide. So as the populations move into these big urban areas, more businesses are developed there, which puts all our eggs in one basket. That's why you're seeing these losses so high. The recovery resources, as you've seen from the fires this year, are spread thin. Federal and state resources are limited for private industry or private businesses, and many businesses don't realize that they're not going to get a lot of federal help. FEMA, for example, finished 2017 $26 billion in debt, and for the first time in 2017, FEMA bought reinsurance. So that kind of tells you how the federal response is going to be from here on out. So we try and explain to businesses the concept of a cascading disaster, and there are 2 different types basically, and let me quickly explain that to you. The example you saw in Hawaii, you had 2 different disasters back to back. First, they had a volcanic eruption that impacted the local governments and the citizens there and the businesses. It impacted tourism, and then along comes a big hurricane, which was one of the largest ones they've had in 40 years. California's had a similar event. In 2008, we had a recession, you remember? Then overlapping that recession was a 5-year drought. And at the end of that drought, we started having bad fires, which we still have to this day. Then the other type of cascading disaster, which we try and explain to businesses, have been, for example, let me focus on an earthquake example. So you have the shaking damage is obvious to businesses. They know that. But what they don't know is the risk from fire following earthquake. And that's a new concept for them. The last bad fire following earthquake we had in an urban area was San Francisco in 1906. So we've been doing scenarios from 2011 and 2013 showing that the fire risk or the fire damage can be greater than the shaking damage. That's a possibility. And we had some resistance on believing that back then, but I think that resistance is gone now based on the fire seasons we've seen now. No power, no water to these businesses for months at a time. It's going to be possible. You try and educate them on that. The aftershock sequence will continue. A magnitude 7 on the Haywired Fault in this scenario can bring you a couple of magnitude 6 aftershocks 6 months later. So those businesses will be continually impacted by that. The economy, basically is a disaster for these businesses, as you know. They're not quite sure how much relief they're going to get or help from government. And then, unfortunately, in the fires, you've seen this: the scammers show up and the fraud that's put on our victims of these disasters. Many local governments don't understand the concept of red tag. Right? Their business gets red tagged. They're not sure what that means, what the impact is. So we want to educate them on being prepared, make sure their structure is prepared, and the concept that even if your structure is okay, one-story business, next door might be a 5-story building that's red tagged. Therefore, your business will be red tagged. So you really have to be prepared as a community, as a business community, for these disasters. Continuing aftershocks can weaken dams. And so then you're going to have evacuations from dams, which you saw in Oroville, which is a very, very difficult position on the residents and businesses of that area, if you remember that. So that's something we have to worry about. If your business is downstream of a dam in an inundation zone, you have to be prepared. What are you going to take with you if you're told to leave? And then, of course, rains afterwards, after these fires, cause these severe mud flows, and we saw that in Montecito. So businesses are failing. FEMA's numbers are 40% of businesses never reopen after a big disaster. And for those that reopen, 29% still operating after 2 years. So the odds are against a business to survive unless they're prepared. So as we move forward now, the Commission developed a business disaster guide, and we contract with the small business development centers to take a look at disasters that impacted businesses around the country. So it's based on real world disasters, done by business for business in a language that they understand. And we want this document, it's a paper document, and it's on our website, that all business, small business especially, have this document at a good location that they can go to after an event. So we focused on, there's a pre-disaster checklist in this document. There's business insurance information about where they go afterwards to collect their insurance or even apply for it. There is a business interruption worksheet in there that they can individually calculate their business losses for every day that they're down or out of business. SBA information, disaster assistance info, how much do you qualify for, what do you do? IRS information about where a business can go, for example, filing against your loss against the previous year's tax return. And then one of the most complicated issues we've seen with business has been the landlord-business relationship after an event. If a building is, the business is leasing is red tagged, what are the rights of the landlord, what are the rights of the tenant? So you notice, next slide please, you notice in our guide we did not use the term earthquake, and that represented our first big shift into multi-hazard approach here. The Haywired scenario that Lynn's going to talk about here is a step forward on that, and now we're moving on to the Outsmart disaster program, which is going to try and assist businesses as best we can based on real world information. And in that, she's going to describe the Resilient Billion Business Challenge, which is not mandated, by the way. So we're seeking your support and advice on how to implement this program. And just a point for your calendars, the Great Shakeout will occur on April 18th, 2018. And that's going to impact schools, businesses, and government. And you can go to the website. Their website is shakeout.org. So with that, Lynn, I'll turn that over to you, please.
Okay, thank you, Dick, for putting this into context for us. And thank you, Nick and the CSAC team, for inviting us to be here today. I'm going to provide you with a quick overview of the Outsmart disaster campaign, but then spend most of my time today talking about how local governments particularly can be involved. When we started at the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, which is the cabinet level agency that oversees the Seismic Safety Commission, when we started looking at some of the threats and the issues that Dick outlined for you today, and really starting to think about what next, one of the critical interlocutors that we see in being able to make change and have this campaign be successful are the local governments. We believe that local governments are critical to the success of this campaign, and that also that this campaign can support the enormous strides that have been taken in recent years by local governments, regional agencies, utility service providers, infrastructure management, businesses, and residents towards the goal of more resilient communities. So just giving you a quick overview of how this campaign started and who's involved. The Seismic Safety Commission, as Dick mentioned, is the lead organization on the Outsmart disaster campaign, being supported by the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. Very uniquely, the campaign also includes over 65 partners that include local governments, private businesses, organizations that are focused on resiliency and risk mitigation, and also financial partners that have been providing contributions to be able to make this campaign a success. We're also working very closely with the United States Geological Survey, who is producing the Haywired research, which serves as the foundation for this campaign. And we're also partnered with a 501c3, which is able to make this campaign operate from a financial perspective. Just a quick overview on the Haywired scenario itself. So this was a hypothetical quantitative depiction of what happens in a 7.0 earthquake hits an urban area, specifically the San Francisco Bay Area, with an epicenter in Oakland. The intention of this research was to provide a realistic framework that can serve as a common operating picture for planning and mitigation efforts. It focused on building codes, lifeline interdependencies, community loss, and the internet economy. Two of the things that were really unique about this research is that first, it was done in a time where the internet economy is a main contributing factor and is part of the way that the businesses, communities, local governments are all connected together. And then secondly, it also it brought in the private sector into the research development to really get the best understanding that we could about what true resiliency and mitigation efforts were in place so that we could get the most realistic picture as possible. And as I mentioned before, while the campaign has moved from beyond just the Bay Area and beyond just earthquakes, we think that this research provides a very clear picture and a common framework from which we can have discussions about what we think are the best ways for local governments and businesses to consider preparing and investing to be able to get back to business faster and smarter. So the Outsmart disaster campaign has three primary goals. The first is to improve communication between the scientific community, policymakers, and the business community. The second is to be able to translate the research into actions that we know can make a difference right now. And the third is to be able to build the capacity within communities to respond and recover with a specific focus on the interventions that can be made by public organizations and private businesses. The campaign has been managed in 3 phases. The first started in July of 2017, and that was really focusing on strategy and design. And the second phase was a regional campaign, which we're just coming to a conclusion of, where we really focused on the Haywired research itself and piloted this campaign in the Bay Area. We're now getting ready to pivot this campaign where we will refocus on the full state, and then we'll also make sure that this includes all natural hazards, earthquakes, fires, floods, etc. And that is getting ready to launch, as Dick said, in October, as to coincide with the Great Shakeout. A little bit about the strategy that we've employed on this campaign. The first is promoting the findings of the Haywired research to operate from a common framework. If you go to our website, outsmartdisaster.com, you can see that we have taken great pains to take very, very copious research volumes and be able to translate them into high-level findings that can be utilized by local governments and by private businesses. We've also really striven to make this information more user-friendly for businesses. We know that when research and scenarios can come out, it can be very, very technical, and the translation between research to action can be difficult, so we have made great efforts in being able to do that on behalf of this campaign. One thing that's been really important is to promote the work that's already being done on mitigation and resiliency, particularly local governments, but also many private businesses and organizations have made great strides towards their own mitigation and resiliency, both in terms of planning and investment. And part of this campaign goal is to really make sure that we highlight and focus on work that's already been done and use that as a starting point to be able to provide more information on what additionally can be done and how those who have best practices instilled can help those that are at the starting point. The campaign also is setting itself to provide toolkits and serve as a launch pad for information. We have designed the website in a way that is very user-friendly, that has all the information that a local government or a business might need to be able to participate in the campaign and have access to all the resources and tools that help them with this very complicated issue. We've also designed the campaign to really utilize the partner network to amplify messages. So as this campaign has grown, we have been inviting more and more partners to join the table and have been designing information in a way that can be easily shared and distributed through partners networks as a way to amplify the message across the state. And then finally, we've set this up so that we can have what we're calling calls to action. And that's where we take very specific, tangible requests and design resources in a way that can help mobilize local businesses, local governments to be able to achieve some of the high-level goals of the campaign. So our first call to action is the Resilient Business Challenge. And this is a voluntary, free of charge building block approach that invites California businesses that are new to resiliency investments to step in and well-practiced companies to step up to assist their communities in faster innovation. What we've created is an online challenge that provides a toolkit and a series of areas of focus that businesses can look to be able to improve and enhance their own resiliency and mitigation efforts. Unlike some of the other processes that are out there, it is not a certificate. It is a participation process where it can scale very well depending on what stage the local business is in. So for a business that's very new to resiliency and maybe has just a couple employees and is in an industry that has not traditionally invested in resiliency efforts, there's a method for them to be able to participate and succeed. And then all the way through to companies that have global presence and emergency managers, full teams looking at business continuity. There's a way for them to be able to enhance their current efforts and then also be recognized for work that they do within their local communities. When a company completes each level of the challenge, then the Seismic Safety Commission will issue a Resilient Business Badge. This is an emblem that we've designed and will continue to promote through the campaign that recognizes the work and the investment that business has achieved. The way that it's being distributed, it would be able to be put on doors of physical buildings, on websites, on marketing materials, and then through the campaign, we will really showcase and explain and communicate how we think that business has invested in its community and helped move itself forward and its community forward in terms of mitigation and planning. And then also through our website, managed by the Seismic Safety Commission, we will have an online registry that lists all the participating businesses to make sure that they get recognition for the completion, and also so that it can be served, it can be a tool for somebody who's looking to do business with a company that has taken these strides. So the 4 levels of the challenge are as following. The first is a resilient business. And this is really focused on an internal focus for small businesses or those that are new to resiliency. There are 5 areas of focus that we ask businesses to consider. The second level is a business leader, and it's still an internal focus, but it's focused on building the efforts on top of the existing resiliency efforts. A business, when starting this challenge, can start at either level 1 or level 2. The third stage, which I'm really excited about, is a community leader. And that's where a company that has completed the steps 1 and 2 and has a really strong resiliency and business continuity effort in place can pivot and really focus on what they can do to support those around them. So be it contributions into their local community, coordination with local governments, training and support for those in its supply chain or those that are in its physical proximity. And then finally, the 4th level is a state leader. And this is where the commission will recognize companies that have really innovated in this area and can provide ideas that can be considered at the state level and should be promoted for being game-changing in the resiliency and mitigation field. Okay, so that's my overview of the campaign, and now I'd like to pivot to how local governments can get involved with Outsmart Disaster, and very specifically what it is that we are asking of you today. So I'll go through the 5 areas. The first is sign up. The second is accessing the local government resource page. The third is signing the city and county resolution. 4th is promoting the challenge with local businesses. And the 5th is promoting the local results of your community. So the first thing I would ask you to do today is to sign up on our website. If you go to outsmartdisaster.com, you can go to the Stay Informed section and provide an email address. This will get you onto our listserv, and it'll make sure that you receive information that's coming out from the campaign. Also, if you indicate if you're interested in participating in the monthly partner meeting, we've designed a monthly meeting where our partners, and we want that to include local government representation, are given a bit of a heads up on what the campaign is doing each month before that information is made public. So please do sign up. The second request we have for you today is to become a champion of the Outsmart Disaster campaign in your community. We've developed a local government resources page that includes supporting documents that we think can help you be able to do this. If you go to the website, you go to the resources section, and there's a tab for local government. This includes social media toolkits, general campaign resources, sample press statements, and then also a city-county resolution that's drafted that we would encourage you to endorse. These are all structured as templates that can be edited and utilized. It also includes, I should say, talking points about how to talk about the campaign to your local community, to your economic development offices, to your local businesses. As you're going through this resource page, if there's anything else that that would be helpful, please do flag it for us, because we want to make this as easy as possible to ask for your support and your endorsement of this campaign. One of the elements in the toolkit is a city-county draft resolution, and we would love for you to consider working with your county or your city councils to endorse this resolution. Essentially, what the draft resolution says is that you recognize that natural disasters are a real risk. It goes through some of the elements that Dick provided about some of the new normal in our state. And then it essentially endorses the campaign and encourages local businesses to participate in the Resilient Business Challenge. We will be, through the campaign, promoting and sharing stories as cities and counties do adopt the resolution, and making sure that cities and counties get a lot of public recognition through the press and through our networks for those that have taken this important first step. To then help with this, we've also included sample press releases to be able to communicate your commitment to the goals of the Outsmart Disaster campaign and the endorsement of the Resilient Business Challenge. And we have created a quite robust social media toolkit. The campaign is active on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and is posting about once a week on events that are happening, on new information that's coming out through the research, on companies that are completing the Resilient Business Challenge. We're hoping on local governments that endorse the resolution. And the way that this is designed is that the information is being created in a way that can be easily shared directly from your social media accounts, but also can be edited if you want to add your own color and your own local dynamics to the social media post. Again, we're really trying to design this in a way that can help augment existing efforts that you have around resiliency and mitigation, and be able to give some really good-looking marketing material and collateral that can help get people excited and interested and engaged on the topic of natural disaster preparedness and resiliency. Now, one of the things that we have done, it was at the request of a very early meeting with one of our city partners, was to make sure that we are providing information back to local governments about businesses in their area that are going through the Resilient Business Challenge. So when a business does sign on to register to participate in the challenge, and then when they complete the challenge, we have been capturing information about the location of the business, the name of the business, the industry that the business is within, and we've committed to being able to provide that information back to local governments so that you are able to promote and discuss the types of industries and the number of businesses and organizations in your community that are successfully going through this campaign. I won't go through this in much depth, but I did want to make sure that you have access to a number of links on the website, so that it's easy for you to be able to explore and find and resource the documents that we've discussed today. So you can see that there are some overview documents of the campaign, talking points that can help you articulate this campaign to your peers and to local leadership, to the business community in your local area. And then there are a number of fact sheets around the research that give just really high level but just critical information about some of the risks that we face in our state. And finally, here are 2 email addresses, both myself and then also Selena Valencia, who's a Director of Legislation and Communications at the Seismic Safety Commission, as well as a general inquiry email. Please do reach out if you have any questions, if you're interested in the campaign and want more information, if there's something that you think would be helpful to you as you embark on this campaign, let us know. We're building this campaign in a way that we think will continue to grow and expand and be very responsive to the needs of local governments as they're embarking on this campaign with us. So with that, just want to open it up, see if we have any questions from anybody on the call today.
Yeah, we actually do have one question, and so far as you've been putting together this campaign, have there been particular businesses or types of businesses that you've seen respond to it already, or that you'd like to see more of?
That's a great question. We have had participation across the board. When we started the campaign, a lot of the focus seemed to come from utilities and technology companies, larger companies that were involved in the Haywired research itself. But since then, as we have rolled out the Resilient Business Challenge, we've seen participation and completion of the challenge from businesses that range from banks, logistics companies, churches, just
nonprofits.
Nonprofits. Yeah. It's just been a really diverse group of businesses.
Yeah. And I think one of the most interesting, from my viewpoint, is some of the larger industries or businesses are willing to mentor some of the smaller ones, and I think that was a great offer by those companies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's been very cross-sectional, and I think one of the reasons why we're seeing interest from such a variety of businesses is that we've designed the challenge to be able to flex very easily and to be able to scale depending on both what industry the business is in, as well as what their current resources and structure is. So this challenge is applicable to a coffee shop and to Amazon, across the board.
A follow-up question to that, have you seen really interesting measures or folks that have done unique programs to kind of be resilient?
We have, and we have a section on our website that's called Meet a Resilient Business, and that's where we have been showcasing companies as they've been going through the challenge, or as they've been participating in the designing of the campaign. So we've had, I think, PG&E, Visa, CoreLogic, a number of companies that have given us examples of hospitals, Kaiser Permanente, who have given us examples who have given us examples about what they've done, and it ranges from being able to think about kind of business continuity planning to being able to provide employee care and training just across the board. But I would encourage you to go to www.outsmartdisaster.com and really check out our case studies that's under the Meet a Resilient Business section.
Okay, another question from the PIOs, the Public Information Officers. Is there any advice for those offices that you can give to help kind of get involved in the campaign?
Yes. So the first thing I would say is log on to our website and look at some of the social media handles that we have set up. The way that this campaign is designed is to be almost an umbrella level campaign where we're providing kind of high level marketing collateral that has the Outsmart Disaster look and feel, the messaging, and kind of a very common framework, but then can be tailored to be able to be really specific to local communities and businesses themselves. So we've created what I like to say kind of the 75% messaging that then can be augmented and added to be able to show connection across the state, but then also really drive home on local solutions, local risks, and also local efforts that are already underway around this area. But one thing I would encourage also for the PIOs is make sure that you sign up to be on our listserv, and also make sure that you send an email to myself or to Selena Valencia asking to be on the monthly partner call. That's where we're going to be able to give heads up information to our partners about what's coming out, what's new, what new information is going to be available on the website, what our social media messaging is going to look like for the next month, so that we can be able to coordinate before that information comes out and make sure that our local partners are really well connected into the campaign, and we can make sure that messaging comes out simultaneously.
Yeah, and finally, what has been the response from local government, elected officials, and communities that have begun participation? Have they been excited about the program, and what does it mean for the local businesses to get this kind of recognition?
So I think it's been really well received so far. One of the things that we have been pretty cognizant of is that a lot of local governments have emergency plans in place. They have mitigation efforts underway, but being able to communicate that information to local businesses is challenging. Sometimes it's a scary topic. It's a technical topic, and it can be hard to be able to summarize this information in a way that kind of drives action while still shining efforts on kind of the incredibly technical nature of what a local government is doing to be able to secure and prepare its community. And so one of the things that we have heard the most feedback on is that this makes it more accessible, and that this makes it easier to be able to communicate all the local efforts that are underway that often don't get a lot of light shed on them until there is a disaster. Anything that you'd like to add, Dick?
Well, it's also an opportunity for local governments to learn from each other, find out what other local governments have done, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and then hopefully, as more local governments sign on to the program, it does give you some political influence when it comes to dealing with a FEMA, personally, I think, because it's a huge mitigation effort that the state and local governments are putting in, and my hope, my dream in the future is it should enable us to ask for more post-disaster emergency funds, assistance from FEMA, because we've got our act together, and we're taking steps up front before the disaster to reduce the losses and speed that economic recovery, and that's what I think is the greatest thing about this program.
Absolutely.
Oh, and how has this program been informed by actual disasters in other parts of the country or world?
Great question. As we started this campaign, it was in July of last year.
Right.
So we were conceptually looking at how to promote the findings of the Haywired research specifically, and then the fires in Northern California started. And our agency in the Seismic Safety Commission, Cal OES, a number of local governments that were a part of the Recovery and Response Task Force, we really started grappling with the idea of what a big disaster looked like. Of course, everybody knows that in Northern California, 9,000 homes and numerous businesses were impacted. Public utilities and public infrastructure were impacted at a scale that had not been seen in quite some time. And so as this campaign evolved and as our Resilient Business Challenge and our actions evolved, it was all happening simultaneously as the state was trying to grapple with the response to both the fires in the north and then subsequently the south, followed by mudslides. So we were living in the experience as we designed this campaign. And I think that as you look through the way that we've created and structured this information and the resources, you'll see a lot of the lessons learned from the last fire season integrated into this model. I think also one thing that we really benefited from in terms of thinking about it at a more global and national level is that a number of our partners, particularly the global and national level corporations that have been involved in the campaign, were based in Houston, were based in Louisiana, had dealt with some of the issues around employee care, getting back to business, being able to retool their supply chain. So they had lived through these experiences in these very recent large-scale natural disasters. And when we did workshops with local businesses, we had the benefit of these global businesses that could bring directly into this challenge and this solution their recent real-life experience from the numerous hurricanes and fires and flooding that we'd experienced over the last year.
And if I may, there's a chance if you take a look at that disaster resource guide, that's based exactly on what you're talking about. It's time to update that guide, and we would love to have your advice on that, about if there's things we've missed that you think local governments should be informed on. As part of this campaign, we can update that guide, based and include more information on the fire disasters in California. That'd be terrific to have your help on that.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you to Dick and Lynn for joining us. We're going to have Dick and Lynn give us their email one more time. So go ahead, Dick, if you could, for our audience.
Sure. Mine is richard.mccarthy@ssc.ca.gov.
Great. Lynn?
Mine is lynn.vonkoch-liebert@bcsh.ca.gov. And that's a mouthful, so it's also at the tail end of this slide.
And thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.